This is a long story, so bear with me. Growing up as a kid, before I became known a lot for fighting, I was bullied a lot. And a lot of the times I wasn't raised by my mom. I was raised by my aunts and uncles and cousins. So I moved around a lot of different houses, and that plays a big part in the story. So the story begins with me living with aunt number one. And around this time, it was the winter time, Charlotte, North Carolina. Kids not used to getting a lot of snow. So we're at the bus stop waiting for our bus, and the kids began to engage in a snowball fight. Side note, this was in the 6th grade, so I was around 11 or 12 for reference. I'm not really engaging with the kids. Like I said, I was bullied a lot, so I really didn't get along with them. I'm standing off to the side, and all of a sudden, they begin to turn their snowball fight against me. So as they're throwing snowballs at me, I begin to run down this long, steep hill. And once I made it to the bottom of the hill, out of nowhere, 3 large-ass dogs just started chasing me out of nowhere. So now here I am trying to run up the hill with 3 big-ass dogs chasing behind me and snow that I'm not used to. And the kids that were throwing the snowballs at me, they're running, hiding for cover, waiting for the bus to come, and I'm by myself. So just when I was starting to lose breath and get halfway up the top of the hill, out of nowhere, I see something out the corner of my left eye, and simultaneously me and all of the dogs stopped, and we all looked to the left, and there was a little girl standing behind one of the houses, and she went shh, and out of nowhere, the dogs just take off running. So at this point, the bus is already here, and apparently the bus driver had been sitting there waiting for me to get on the bus after staring at the little girl. And when I get on the bus, she asked me what are you staring at? And I was like, there's a little girl behind the house, and she helped get the dogs off of me. Now on the bus, I'm starting to process what just happened, in the little girl, and who the hell was she? Now on the bus, I'm processing what just happened. And one thing that stuck out in my mind was how I noticed that when I saw the little girl, she didn't have any shoes on. She was barefoot. She had on a long white dress, shoulder length brown hair, and something about her skin was pale, really pale. Not thinking much of it. I ain't tell nobody. I'm a kid. I went by my business. Later in that week, my sister comes to spend the night with me at my aunt's house. And how my aunt's house is set up, there's the living room, and then there's a hallway that leads to the bathroom. And at nighttime, that hallway gets really, really dark, you can't see down it. So me and my sister, we were laying on the couch. I was on one couch, she was on another. And out of nowhere, in the middle of the night, she jumps on me and just starts wailing and screaming. And so my aunt come in and she's like, what's wrong with you? And my sister was like, I could have sworn I just saw something coming down the hallway. Side note, my sister at the time was definitely afraid of leprechauns. So as a kid, she described it as leprechaun coming down the hallway. So fast forward, I'm now in the 7th grade. I'm living with aunt number 2. So aunt number 2, God bless her, will always keep a lot of kids in the home. She was always taking in me, my other cousins, other kids that were less fortunate. And we will all be raised in this house with my aunt and my uncle. So one night, me and all of the other kids of the house, we decided that we wanted to sleep downstairs in the living room on the floor. And how it was that her living room was in the middle, kitchen was off to the left, and then to the right was upstairs, rest of the bedrooms. So this is 3 o'clock in the morning, and me and my cousins are dead cold sleep, and out of nowhere, I feel on my shoulder. It wasn't a hard tap, but it was a tap that got my attention. So thinking it was one of my cousins, I look up and I see this little girl standing over me, and something about her, her aura was glowing. And mind you, we're in a pitch dark house, but I can see her and like everything that's like in her circumference like illuminated. So after making eye contact with the girl, she leans over, looks me in my eyes, and says, "Are you ready to go yet?" I was so scared. I didn't scream. I didn't holler. I just like took the cover and like just hurried up and put it over my head. And that's how I slept for the rest of the night. Like clockwork for years, no matter what house I went to, no matter what family member I was staying with, this girl, whether it be like months, whether it be years down the line, she would randomly pop up, 3-tap me, and lean over in my face and ask me, was I ready to go? The final time I physically saw her, I was maybe in like the 11th grade, and I was now living with my cousin. And at this point, now it's like me, my sister, my brother, we're all back together. I'm in one room, my sister is sleeping in another room. Like clockwork, "Are you ready to go yet?" Usually I put like the covers over my face and I just like hide up under the cover until like daylight. But this time, like I couldn't take it. I just started like screaming and wailing and yelling. And then next thing I know, my cousin's husband like come into the room because it's like 6 o'clock in the morning and he is like cussing me out. So I finally tell him like, it's a girl that has been following me. She keep tapping me and she keep asking me like, am I ready to go? Like I am terrified. Of course, they didn't believe me. So a few minutes later, my sister comes into the room and she tells me like when she was like leaving out of her room, she was walking past the room that I was sleeping in and she heard me like screaming for my life and like it really terrified her. In the midst of that conversation, I just so happened to like feel a burning sensation on my foot. So when I looked down, like the skin on my big toe was like missing. Like it looked like somebody had like scraped it off. There was like nothing around the bed. Like at this point, there was not even a headboard for like me to even scratch my toe. So that really terrified me. So fast forward, I am now in college, in culinary school. I'm living with my best friend and our classmates, and we're just sitting around like sharing ghost stories. And then I proceed to tell them about the little girl that follows me. In the midst of that conversation, like something in our back pantry like fall, and we go in there and it's the broom that has been sitting upright. It's like now on the floor. And one of my roommates like joke around and be like, "Ha ha, that's just Jessica." They named her Jessica. Later in that week, that same roommate came home that night. It told me that while she was driving, she just so happened to look up in her rear view and she saw a little girl sitting in her back seat. And that was the last time anybody ever physically saw Jessica. Now, fast forward to 2019, like I'm getting big in my spirituality and I get really close to a psychic. This psychic decides to give me a reading. And as we're talking, she asks me out of nowhere, like, who is the little girl? Me thinking she's talking about my daughter, I started talking about my daughter and she was like, "No, not her. There's another little girl." So then I proceed to tell her about the little girl that used to follow me. And then out of nowhere, she stopped me and was like, "Yeah, they used to be your guardian angel, but she doesn't like you anymore. And the reason why she don't like you is because a while ago, you allowed your friends to make fun of her and named her, and that wasn't her name. And she didn't like it." Still to this day, I wonder who that little girl was and what she would have done if I would have told her yes to her question of, was I ready to go yet? And I'm sorry for calling you Jessica. If you like that story, I have plenty more. Astral projections, that man. Oh, and the time where I once worked at a famous haunted resort and I let their co-workers talk me into going to a slave church. Don't get used to this content though.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this ghost story isn't necessarily that scary, but I was definitely creeped out. So I like to go to these writing retreats and they're super awesome. And it's a pretty large group of people and all we do really all day is write. It's awesome. But then at meal times we get to chat or we take walks in the woods and we get to chat then if you want to. And so this one, I'm thinking it was 2 years ago. The one retreat, I'm sitting at dinner with a woman I've known for a while, and I know that she believes in spooky stuff. I know that she's had experiences. And then she starts telling me how sometimes she can sense other people's loved ones who have passed already. And then she looks at me and she goes, your mother's standing right behind you right now. And I'm telling you, I got chills up my arms and I started to cry. Like, I instantly started to cry. And I can't say I was creeped out in that moment, but later in the evening, I got to talking to another person who was at this retreat. And she starts saying, you know, I really have trouble writing in the big lodge. That's where I was staying and that's where I was writing. She's like, I can't write when I'm in the big lodge. Different woman than the woman who said she talked to my mother who had passed away. Completely different woman, different situation. We're having a different conversation. The second woman didn't know that the first woman said that to me, that so the second woman did not know that I had earlier that day had an experience. And so she's telling me, yeah, I really have trouble writing in the Great Lodge because everyone who's writing, their loved ones come to them and they help them write. And I'm like, what, really? And she's like, yeah, it's just like, and then they all start talking to me and I can't concentrate. So I come outside and I can write better when I'm outside. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then I started telling her about the interaction I had earlier in the day. And I'm like, well, I'm actually writing a story right now that was inspired by my father. And she was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And that was the end of it. But I'm telling you, for the entire rest of that retreat, I couldn't sleep. I'd fall asleep and I'd be in a deep sleep. And then I would wake up feeling like someone's in the room with me. And there was a little bit of ambient light because the curtains are kind of thin and the outside lights would shine in through the window. And then the hallway light stayed on all night. And so there'd be a little sliver of light coming in from the hallway. And otherwise it's completely dark in my room, but I wake up just feeling like someone was there and being creeped out about it. Not necessarily terrified or scared. It did not feel like a malevolent force. Am I saying that correctly? It didn't feel angry. It didn't feel dangerous. It didn't necessarily feel scary, but it was creepy. And so I'd say prayers. I would say, thank you for coming to see me. Thank you for helping me write, but please let me sleep. I can't write if I can't sleep. And so I am telling you, the whole rest of that trip, I did not sleep well. And other people on that very retreat had other experiences. One woman heard someone scream in the middle of the night. I didn't hear that. Thank God I didn't hear that, because I might have gone home. So on the way home from that retreat, I was thinking about all of these things. I'm driving home and I could smell my dad's cigarettes. And my dad is also passed. And I was like, oh, thanks for being with me on this retreat and helping me with the story, but I'm good. Thanks for stopping by, but yeah, I don't need your visits anymore. And hopefully I could go to this year's retreat and actually sleep.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
I can enter the chat now. I thought this whole thread was based on scary ghost stories, but I came across one that actually was kind of like mine. So I was like, oh, I'll share this one. It's not scary. It definitely makes you question things. So yeah. So I'm going to try and preface this without sharing too much information. So this happened about 10 years ago, and I remember it happening like yesterday. I love this story. So just a little background. My grandpa was sick, and I lived in Reno. He lived in Sacramento, so it was a bit of a drive. I was kind of up to date on his whole state. Kind of. Not entirely, but kind of. But it wasn't until this whole thing that happened that I was like, ah, shit. Okay, so mine's a dream, and I'm gonna try my best to explain it. I go into a lot of detail, so hopefully you guys stick with me through this whole thing. I apologize in advance. Okay, we're gonna set the scene. It is my grandpa's house, my grandpa and Tutu's house in Sacramento. That it was a one-story house, and if you know how Hawaiians are, they are hoarders in a way. So there's just junk everywhere. But at the beginning of my dream, I am in actually one of my mom's cars, and I'm sleeping in the car, and I get woken up by someone knocking on the window. And it was a two-door car. So I was in the back, I had to move the seat up, they had to open the door, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I get out of the car and I'm wrapped in a blanket, and this person asks if I'm okay. I've never met this person before, probably seen him or her, can't quite remember, in like a store or something, and their face just projected in my dream. But I was in the driveway of my grandpa's house, and I look at him. I remember feeling confused. I remember feeling very distraught. I was like, why am I here? What am I doing? Again, very vivid. But they ask if I'm okay, and I'm like, yeah. So I close the door and I start walking up the driveway towards the garage. The garage was open. And when I say junk, I had to weasel my way through the garage into the house. And when you go into the garage door to the house, it's the kitchen. We used to have Sunday dinners all the time at this house, so it was like a Sunday dinner gathering. Like the whole family was there. But I get into the kitchen and I see my dad and two of my uncles. They're just talking, and they see me, and my dad puts his arms around his brothers, and he's like, look, it's my daughter, it's this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm still very confused at this point. And they were it was like they were drunk. Like, that's usually how they get when they get around each other. They just drink. So, confused me. I turn to the right, and when you turn to the right, after you go into the kitchen a little ways, there's an archway that will take you either down the hallway to the left, where the bedrooms are, or to the right, which is the living room. I go through the arch, I look to the right, and I see the living room, and there's just, my whole family's in there. It is literally just another Sunday dinner. Everyone's normal, having their own little conversations, whatever. They're in their own little world. I look to the left, and right before you enter the hallway, there's another bedroom, and that's where the kids used to play. So my cousins were in there, and they were playing, watching TV, doing what we do on a Sunday dinner. All of a sudden, I look down the hallway, and my Tutu is walking down the hallway. Mind you, my Tutu died 10 years ago at this point. But she looked different. She didn't look like how she looked when she passed away. She was younger. She was glowing. And she was so beautiful. Like, her aura was just so different. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm going to say this because this is like a huge thing for me, is before she passed away, she had a swollen stomach because she had, I think it's called NASH. So she had non-alcoholic something. It's something to do with her liver, right? So her stomach was swollen. When she passed away, her stomach wasn't swollen this time. Again, she projected to me that when she was young, like how she felt at her best. And I've been told that that's what happens. And then all of a sudden, I felt this feeling of relief. And I was so excited to see her. I was so happy. I dropped my blanket and I gave her a hug, and I said, I miss you. Oh my God. I wish you were here, blah, 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 right? Just the whole, everything of my emotions and feelings of missing this woman came out. And she had a very heavy accent. Like, it was Hawaiian, pidgin, broken English mixed with Portuguese. So she had a very strong accent, and it came through in my dream, which was amazing. So, with that being said, she was talking to me too. She said, I know, I miss you too. And then she said, he will be okay. He will be okay. Everything's gonna be fine. So confusion hit me, but then shortly after that, it was more so understanding. And then it was just like, I really want to just keep holding you. So I'm not going to question anything that you're saying right now. We end up falling to our knees, hugging each other in a very nice warm embrace. And in my dream, I'm realizing that I'm the only person seeing her right now. Like, no one's flocking to us. No one's like, oh my God. It's just everyone's carrying on about their day or about their Sunday dinner while I'm over here on my knees, bawling my eyes out, hugging my tutu. And then shortly after that, I woke up crying, right? Because I was feeling all the emotions from the dream and it just came out into real life. But I woke up and I was so sad. Blah, 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 blah. Literally played through my whole dream the next day, wrote it out, tried to get an understanding of what was going on. So, like I told you before, I understood that my grandpa was on borrowed time, and I didn't know how bad his state was really at this point. So after I wrote it all out, made sure that I got every single detail, I called my sister. It was my sister or my mom. Again, this happened 10 years ago. But I called one of them and told them my dream, and I know it was my mom now. The reason I know is because what I'm about to tell you. So I called my mom, told her about my dream, and my mom is the type to not really say much because she didn't want me to worry. So she was like, oh wow, like, that's insane. I can't believe you saw her. She came to you. Like, my mom's really into that kind of stuff too. So she was like, I can't believe she came to see you. That's great. That's so great. And I kept asking her, I was like, what does she mean? Like, what does she mean by everything's going to be okay? Like, I can't figure that out. She goes, I don't know, sweetie. Like, that's just, maybe are you having a hard time? Like, cause I lived in Reno, right? So I was far away from my family, and I'm a huge family person. So my mom was like, are you homesick or something? Homesick, mom? Really? A week later, I get a call. My grandpa passed away. And in that call, because it was from my mom, in that call, my mom said, Tutu came to you to let you know that he was going to be joining her soon. Because no one else was telling me that my grandpa was on his deathbed. Get this. The night I had my dream, my grandpa was on hospice. That was the day he went into hospice. But he requested that he wanted to be in his own house. So he was getting a gurney set up for him that night. And he was to lay in that gurney in his house until his life was over. So yeah, that is my story. And that was the time that my tutu came and visited me in my dream to let me know that my grandpa was going to be okay when he passed.
Compared to some other people's videos that I've seen, this one might not be anything that's like insane, but I still feel like I need to share my story because yeah, I just do. So a couple years ago, I worked at a place, and there was a girl there, and I very quickly became friends with her, and we hung out a lot. Now, we typically hung out at my house, or we would like go out to eat. I never hung out really at her house, like rarely if ever. So the times that I have gone into her home, I always sensed that something was a little off. And I never said anything to her because it wasn't something that was off in a real life sense. It was something that was off more in a spiritual way. I could just feel that there was something in her house. Okay. And anybody who is an empath, or if you have clairvoyancy in any form, or you just have a sixth sense of any kind, you can kind of sense shit like that. So anyway, back to the story. So this particular night, her family was out of town, and she asked me to sleep at her house because she didn't want to stay there alone. So, kind of reluctantly, I said yes, but I was just like, all right, let me just go over because I don't want her to be alone. Yeah, bad idea. And let's keep in mind before I tell this story that my friend at the time literally told me that her house was haunted and she has seen shadows walking on her wall that are literally in the shape of a person. She has seen faces in her window and she has saged her house multiple times. Okay, yeah, so moving on. And my dumbass was like, yeah, girl, I'll sleep over. Like, why did I agree to that? Anyway, I'm at her house and we're watching a show, and I hear the back door open and a woman talking. I pause the show and I tell her that her stepmom is home early. To which then she tells me, girl, nobody is home. Play the show. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm not like Looney Tunes. Like, I literally just heard a woman talking. Like, I'm not 99%. No, like, I just heard your back door open and somebody is in your house talking. But okay, girl, I will play the show. Sure. I play the show. Maybe about 20, 30 seconds later, I hear it again. The sound of a woman talking. I pause the show for the second time. I look at her and I say, girl, your stepmom is home. I hear her. Like, she's in the house. To which then my brain fully computes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So basically, me and you are going to have a little paranormal activity moment right now. Okay, so now I'm fucking scared. Okay, so I play the show. So then I say to her, girl, are you sure, like, it's not your brother, like, downstairs? Like, is he, like, watching TV as well? And it's loud, and I'm hearing a woman talking from his show. The only person that was home was her brother. So she goes to the basement steps, which is where his bedroom is. Okay. And all the lights are off. There's no TV on. The lights are off. And she hears him snoring downstairs. This man is asleep. Okay? There was no possible way her brother could have been doing this. How did I hear the back door open? What, he just, like, came upstairs? And we just didn't see it, even though the door to the basement is right there where we can see it. But we just didn't see it or hear it. And he's fucking with us. And then he went back downstairs and we also didn't see that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, I play the show, and maybe 10 seconds later, I hear talking again, but this time it sounds closer. Okay, and it's more prevalent. Is that the word I'm looking for? It is, I can hear it more clearly this time. So I pause the show and I tell her, I'm not fucking delusional. Somebody is in your house. At this point, I'm actually, like, thinking, did somebody break in her home? She says, Shaun, stop pausing the show, ignore it, and play the show. Ignore what? It's that sound that's like, baby, help you do what? All I could do is pray for you. I needed somebody to pray for me. I needed Jesus in that moment. Okay, but anyway, moving on. So now I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna play the show and stop pausing it because clearly there's something in here and I don't want to keep feeding it attention. You know what I'm saying? So as I'm turning, she's on one end of the couch, I'm on the other end. I am turning to grab the remote, and literally in my earshot, I'm talking about right here. It literally sounded like it was either right here or right here. Okay? It was a foot away from me. Legitimately 1 foot. I hear a little girl voice. Yeah, a little girl, maybe like 5 years old. And it says, hi. Clear as day. Just like that. Hi. Yeah, wrap it up. I physically jumped off of her couch. Physically. I think my body, my feet, I think I was in the air. Okay? Grabbed all my shit and told her, I'm going home. So you can either come with me, because I'm not staying here. So you can either come with me, okay, and we can stay at my house where it's not haunted, or you can stay here with your ghost friends and y'all can have a sleepover and have a grand time. I'm not staying here. She packed all of her stuff quicker than I've ever seen somebody pack a bag. She came and slept at my house, and we never talked about it again. Never. Not one time. I'm no longer friends with this girl, but if she just happens to be on my page and watches this, or if this blows up and she sees it on her For You page, hey girl, hey. I definitely remember my first paranormal experience was at your house, so that was kind of cute and fun. Yeah. And maybe I can make a different video, like about what I'm about to say, but I've always felt like I kind of had like a sixth sense. Uh, I think people call it like clairvoyancy and stuff like that because there's different forms of clairvoyancy. Um, but yeah, anybody who kind of is like an empath, or if you are clairvoyant in one sense or another, or if you even just believe in higher powers, spiritual beings, you know that like when you can't sit here and say, oh, it could have been this, it could have been that, and there's just no other explanation for something like that, it's like terrifying in the moment, but after the fact, and like even now when I think about it, it brings me some form of peace, even though it was terrifying in the moment. I do feel a sense of peace that there is life after death, and I'm gonna go somewhere after my soul leaves my body. Um, so yeah, that does bring me a little bit of peace. So yeah, it's just kind of nice to know now that we're all gonna go somewhere, hopefully, and it will be much more peaceful than the Earthside version of us.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I have been wanting to tell this story because I lived in the Midwest for 3 years, and there is something weird about the Midwest. Like, there is just some creepy stuff that goes down there. There's a lot of old houses there. And anyway, I lived in the Midwest for 3 years in this town called Creston, Iowa, and I went to a music school out there, and it was a really creepy house. It was called the Dollhouse. And it kind of notoriously known to be like the music school party house. And the reason why we called the Dollhouse was because it was a giant Victorian style house that was like Pepto-Bismol pink and had like white trim and everything. And all the rooms were like a different pastel color. It was cute. It was a really cute house, but weird things, honestly, when I was alone there, like there was some weird things that happened. I was rarely alone because, again, it was a party house, but it was just when I was alone, it was kind of weird. But basically, I want to tell you guys a story about the time that a ghost just decided to pretend to be my roommate. It was very strange. I still to this day cannot explain it, but it revolves around spring break. So spring break rolled around that year, and I was super inseparable with this one chick, and she would pick me up in the morning and she would drop me off at night. And at the time, like for that spring break, the only roommates in the house were me and my roommate Tim, because everybody else decided to go home for spring break, right, to their own respective towns or states, right? I had 4 roommates, by the way. So and I didn't really, it wasn't uncommon for me to like kind of go days without talking to Tim, because again, he was older, he was kind of keep to himself kind of guy, and he would hole himself in his room and practice and stuff, and the way to get to his room was kind of weird too. Like, you had to go through Mike's bedroom to get to his room. Like, you had to go through Mike's bedroom to a little hallway that had like a little bathroom that they shared, and then into his bedroom. Or you go through the dining room and go up this secret stairwell into the floor of Tim's bedroom. It was like a hatch that you would like open, and it was the floor of his bedroom. It was really weird. But it was kind of, like I said, it was common for him to kind of hole himself in the room and not like come out. And so for me, it was just normal to not see him for days on end sometimes. Or I would see him like in class or whatever, and like in rehearsal or whatever for choir. But other than that, like I didn't see him at home hardly, unless we were having a party or something, you know? And long story short, I would come home late at night like every night, well after midnight, this girl would drop me off after our, little shenanigans that we would get into during the day. And then I would look up and his bedroom light would be on in the window. I would see it every night. I would see it. And it gave me comfort to know that I wasn't by myself. Right. And so I'm like, okay, cool, Tim's home. And then I would go. It was weird because, like I said, he was a very quiet guy, and he very kept to himself and stuff. And I remember going to bed every night, and every night I would hear him walking around. And he was like, I mean, he was tall. I think he was like something crazy, like 6'3" or 6'5" or something. He was tall. People would call him Tree, like Tim the Tree. Like, that's how tall he was. So, he wasn't a quiet walker. He was a dude. He was a big dude. So you would hear him walking around, and the house was old, so it would creak, and like, it would, the walls were thin. So I would hear him walking around, and I would hear him going into my bathroom, which was right outside in the hallway, because my bathroom had the laundry. And I remember because it would be like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear him, and the water would be running in the drum of the washer. And I would hear him open and close the washer and dryer doors. I mean, they were old washer and dryers, so it was like you could hear, they were loud, So I was like, okay. So that's weird, but like I didn't judge him because, like everybody has their own routine, I guess. Like, And so I was like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. And this happened every night that week. Like, I would hear him walking around, and I would already be in bed, so there was really no point in me getting up to check on him because I was tired from the day, or like I would just be like in bed, and I would already be in bed, so I was like, why am I going to get up, So Saturday rolls around, and I am in the freezer, like, and the fridge was right next to the door, like literally right next to the back door of our house. And I had opened up the freezer, and I was digging around in there, and I hear the back door open, and I look, and it's Tim, and he has like bags, like travel bags, and a backpack and stuff. And I was like, where are you going? And he was like, what do you mean I'm coming home? And I was like, what do you mean you're coming home? And he was like, yeah, I decided to go to the Twin Cities with Forrest. And I was like, what do you mean you decided to go to the Twin Cities with Forrest? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, how long have you been gone? And he was like, oh, the whole week. And I was like, what the hell? You're joking, right? I was like, someone's in the house, like it's crazy. So I tell him everything, right? And I'm like freaking out. We go upstairs, go into his bedroom, everything is as he left it. And the light is off, like turned off. And I was like, I swear I saw it on every day. I heard you walking around at night. I was like, there's no way. Like I couldn't figure out why or how this happened. And I was freaking out, right? And still to this day, I don't know who was in the house. I really don't. And it baffles me to this day. And there were other instances before that instance that scared the shit out of me. Like, there's people outside my door right here. But basically, yeah, it was just like weird things would happen. I remember one time I was like in my room, and I was like writing on a piece of paper. I didn't have a desk, so I would like sprawl out all my paperwork, all my handwritten assignments, and I would write it, on the floor. I would be on the floor, and I looked up. When you get that feeling when like somebody's approaching your door and they're about to knock on the door, you kind of already preemptively look up because you already know that they're there. Like, that's the feeling I got. And so like I look up at the door, and the door, you had to jam it shut. So when you opened it, because it was like a swollen wood and the latch didn't work, so like you had to jam it shut because the wood was swollen, and every time you'd open it, it would literally make a big popping noise every time you would open the door. And I remember I look up having that feeling like someone was approaching my door, and it pops open. And I'm thinking somebody's there, and nobody was there. So I go outside and I look, literally no one's there. And I see that there's a window at the end of the hallway, and it's open. So I was like, okay, let me just close that. So I close the window. And I go back into my room, and I jam it shut, and I start doing my homework again. And like a few minutes later, I feel that same feeling, like someone's approaching my door. As I look over at the door, and it pops open, but this time it starts to creak open. So I get up right away. Like I get up really quick, and I go outside, and I'm like, Mike, because Mike lived right next door to me. I was like, Mike, is that you? And like I was like freaking out, right? Nothing. Nobody. I was by myself in the house. By my damn self. It was creepy. And I just got all my stuff and I ran out and I went to the school and I finished my homework there. And yeah, and then like I said, every time I was alone after that, which like I said was rare, but on the few occasions that I was, like weird things would happen. Like I would hear footsteps running up and down the stairs, or I would hear like Mike or somebody, one of my roommates, calling my name, and then I would go and look for them and they weren't there. Or I would hear the front door like open and close as if someone was coming in, but then nobody was there. It was just weird things. And I don't think that the like ghost was like bad, because I feel like I don't know, I feel like I felt like really negative energy before, and I didn't get that feeling from it, but it was just like mischievous energy, I guess. I don't know, but it was just weird, and it just felt like there was somebody in that house. Like, I don't know. It was just weird stuff. Weird stuff would happen. And that's basically my ghost story, that I don't think anybody would believe me, but I mean, that's my tale.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Okay, so when I was little, I was about, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years old, and I went down to the south part of Texas where my grandma lives. And my grandma was really, she was old, and I went with my family to stay with her, visit her in the summer. And I was always scared of her house. I was always seeing things and hearing things, and she would tell me stories of things she would see. And I just thought, that at first when she would tell me, I thought, okay, she's just old and she's hearing and seeing things and they're not really there. But then I started seeing and hearing things like that were scary, like babies crying in the middle of the night. I would see shadows and, hear like walking and things moving. And I was just scared of her house. And one of the reasons why I was scared of her house is because my uncle passed away, and he lived with her, and he had a room there that she just left intact. She never um, took anything out. She left all his clothes in the closet, and posters that were hanging on the wall. And it was just scary to me. But one night, we for whatever reason, I haven't even asked my mom why, but we wouldn't stay there at night. We would go with my grandma, my mom. At this particular time, I remember was I don't even know where my dad was, but it was my grandma, my mom, and we were going to go stay with my uncle. And he just lived like you cross, like a big field, and it was my grandma's house, and it was my uncle's house, one of my uncle's houses, and then you went through this little alleyway, and then you ended up in the backyard of my other uncle's house where we were walking to at night. And it wasn't even that dark yet. Like the sun was setting. It was in the evening, and we were leaving. And so my mom there was like a little porch area. My mom was trying to lock the front door, and she tells me, "Can you go look in your uncle's room and make sure that I put the windows down, that they're down in case it rains or something?" And I was like, okay, and I walked off the porch, went around through the front of or right in front of the porch, and I just kind of peeked in. And when I peeked in, the windows were down, but I could still see through the curtains. And when I looked in, I saw this. It was like a ball, and it was like a big glowing ball. I mean, it wasn't just like light. It was very lit up, and it looked like a ball of fire or something, like orangey red. And then I just saw it move from one side of the room and just really fast across the room towards the living room, like where my mom was standing at locking the front door. And at that time, I just got this weird feeling, like I froze in fright.
and goosebumps all over me. And I just stood there completely frozen. I started freaking out. I started crying. And my mom comes running to me and she's hugging me and she's like, "What happened? What happened?" And I couldn't even talk to her. I was just still crying. And then finally she calmed me down. We walk over to my aunt's house, and I remember they gave me like a glass of like salt water that I was supposed to drink, supposedly to because I got frightened so bad that I had to have this salt water um to kind of help with that. And then I was finally able to talk to her, and I told her what I saw. And she just kind of looked at me and she's like, "Oh, you're seeing things." And it wasn't until way later as an adult that we talked about that incident. And she told me that she didn't want to tell me this at the time because of how scared I got. But she also got just as scared because at the same time that I was, screaming and crying, that she also froze up because she heard clear as day footsteps. Not really like footsteps, but more like stomping. She heard stomps coming from the direction of my uncle's room towards the front door, and she said she even like fumbled with the keys trying to like put them in and lock it. And that she had to lock it real quick before she came running to me because she didn't know if somebody was in there trying to come out or what was going on. And so, yeah, there was some other things that happened at my grandma's house, but I think more of it was just me being scared of the stories that she would tell me, the things that she would see, especially like outside, and she would hear like cats meowing by her window and lights all the time. And so I was just always scared to stay there. Whenever we would go, I would like to stay with my cousins and things like that. I was just scared. And then um, my mom, she ended up keeping that house after my grandma passed away, but not very long. She sold it. But that's just one of my stories. I have a lot of other stories that have happened in different places that maybe I'll tell more, but that's one of the first ones that I remember that really scared me.
This ghost experience I'm about to tell you happened on a Friday night. I was the only one home. My twin brother was at a friend's house, and my mom and stepdad, I think they were out on a date or running errands or something. And I think at the time I must have been like 16 or 17 years old. So around 9 p.m., I was doing my homework in my room, and then I started hearing footsteps downstairs, so I thought it was my mom. So I opened my bedroom door, and I'm like, "Mom," no response. "Mom," no response. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's rude. So I shut and locked my door, which is something I've always done, and thank God I did this night. That's when I started hearing my dogs barking and growling like crazy. At that time, we had 3 dogs. A Chihuahua, a Yorkie, and a Pit Bull. And if you know anything about Yorkies and Chihuahuas, they will bark at everything and anything. But our Pit Bull, Roman, he only barked and growled whenever he felt threatened. And that's when I started hearing the footsteps pick up speed, like as if someone was running around the first level of our house. And then I started hearing opening and slamming our kitchen cabinets really hard. And then it kept on running around the first level. And I was getting really scared, so I texted my mom. I'm like, "Mom, are you home?" And my mom's like, "No." And I was like, what the heck? That's weird. So then I heard whoever this was go up the stairs really slow. Like up the stairs going creak, 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 creak. And one thing you need to know about this house is that my bedroom was at the top of the stairs, but a little bit to the left. As soon as it reached the top of the stairs, I could hear like nails go at the top of my door and going like scratching all the way to the bottom. And then at one point, I started seeing my bedroom doorknob start jiggling, slow at first, and then like a regular speed, and then start jiggling like crazy. And I could see that my like door was shaking, and I was like, "Oh my God, I think someone broke into the house." So I called my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I think someone's in the house." And she decided to like blow me off. She's like, "No, you have an active imagination. Like no one's at the house." And I'm like, "Mom, I swear to God, I think someone's at the house. They're outside my bedroom door shaking like the doorknob." And my mom's like, "Okay, I guess I'll come home." Still not believing me, which at the time really made me mad. And then I started hearing this thing walk away from my door, like the jiggling of the doorknob stopped, and I heard it walk into my brother's room, which was right next to my room. And I started hearing it like opening and shutting his closet door, banging it, and it started running around the top level of our house. And then it stopped at my door again and started banging, and that's when I heard it's going, "Mom," but in my voice. "Mom." I don't think I've ever been that scared because it was like, I guess, a mimic. I guess that's what they're called, but like I genuinely thought something was in the house, like someone was in the house. I didn't think it was anything paranormal at the time, but like I could hear my voice trying to talk to me, and that was so creepy. And then I started hearing it laugh in my, like I said, in my voice. And then I heard it go down the stairs, running around the house, and like it kept on like banging stuff, and I guess I could hear it move furniture. I don't really know. I just started hearing a lot of loud noises downstairs and me laughing in my voice, but I wasn't laughing. And this happened for like the next 10-15 minutes until my mom and stepdad got home. My stepdad looked around the house. The house was fine. None of the furniture got flipped over, I guess. Like our cabinets, everything was fine. My stepdad looked everywhere. No one was there. And I came out. I'm like, "Mom, I swear to God, I heard a ghost." And my mom's like, "I don't think so." My mom didn't believe me, and honestly, she should have. Honestly, I shouldn't have called my mom. I should have called the police. I should have called 911. Because, like, I know she wasn't trying to invalidate what I saw, but my mom doesn't believe in the paranormal at all. But yeah, that was probably the scariest paranormal experience I've ever had. If you do want me to tell you about the time I saw a Confederate soldier in my backyard, I will make a second video, but like, tell me in the comment section if you do.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Hello. So I have 3 that I can remember off the top of my head, and I'll try to make it quick. So the first one, I was back in my hometown, about 14 or 15 years old, and that day my parents were sitting in the dining room table and my sister was in the living room. I was in the restroom washing my hands, finishing up, and a little backstory, it had been my birthday and my aunt and uncle had given me this little porcelain doll. Not really a doll, but more like a figurine. So I didn't know where to put it. I ended up putting it in the bathroom window above the sink. And yeah, as I'm walking away from the restroom and I'm heading towards the dining room table, I hear my name being called out from behind me, and it was a feminine voice. And I knew it was not my mom or my sister because they were directly in front of me. And yeah, so I played dumb and I looked at my mom and told her, "Did you call me?" I don't remember what I said exactly. And my mom looked at me dead in the eyes and she was like, "No, but I heard that." That really freaked us out. And it's just even crazier that my mom heard it too, so I know I'm not crazy. And then a couple days later, my mom is also using the restroom. She's washing her hands, and all of a sudden she feels her earring just like, she said it felt like they had been pulled out and it had fallen into the drain. So she thought that was really weird because it wasn't the type of earring that could just easily fall off. You had to like manually twist it and everything. So we thought, oh, that is really strange. Nothing like this has ever happened to us. And the only new thing that in her life was that doll, so we threw it away. Yeah, then the second story, years later, we're in our second home, and it's the middle of the night, and I wake up and I can't move my body. My legs are actually dangling off the bed, off the edge of the bed like this, and my arms are like right next to me. I can't move. And what really freaks me out is that obviously I can't speak, I can't move. All I can do is just move my eyes. And at the edge of the bed was my closet, and the doors were wide open, and since it was the middle of the night, everything was dark, and it just freaked me out because the closet was also dark, and I don't know, but that's when I experienced my first ever sleep paralysis, and it has never happened since, but that was not a good feeling at all. At all. This third one happened here at this house. I've been trying to record this and it keeps getting deleted. Well, oh, my husband's home. Okay, I don't know where I left off, but my husband just got home. And I think I was saying that the last one happened here at this house, and I was working. I was home alone, and Jose was at the gym, and all the lights were off except for a night light in the living room. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see that the living room is lit up, right? So from one second to the next, I see that light turn off. And what scared me the most was that my dogs went running to the living room and started barking at that wall where the little nightlight was hanging from. And that freaked me out. My first thought was like, oh no, someone's in the house. Someone got in through the back door or something. And I don't know, that was scary. And, once I realized that no one's in the house, I call Jose and he doesn't pick up, and I call him again, nothing. I end up calling my mom and I explain to her what's going on, and she calms me down. And yeah, but the light eventually turns back on, and I gathered the courage to walk out there, and nothing seems out of place or anything. And yeah, what really freaked me out was that the dogs seemed to have heard or seen something. I don't know. Maybe they heard like electrical crackling noises or something, and maybe that's what it was, but who knows? That really freaked me out, especially because I was home alone. And the whole like sleep paralysis, maybe that could have just been it, just sleep paralysis, and maybe I slept crazy and ended up at the edge of the bed. Maybe it could be that. But the whole hearing my name being called from behind me, and I don't know, because my mom heard that too. So who knows? And I just think it's strange that these things happen to me everywhere that I live. I don't know if something is following me or whatever, but I don't know, it's pretty freaky. And what's crazy is that some other things have happened here at the house, and Jose has seen them, and yeah, but maybe that's other stories for another day.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So I was bartending at the time, and I worked second shift. So before I went to work, I was hanging out with my family, and my brother was talking about how him and his friends were going to the shore in the morning. So I went to work. By the time I got home, it was like after midnight, and my parents worked third shift. So when I would get home, like, it was just me and my brother home. And usually, like, he would be in his room either sleeping or just, like, hanging out, like, playing games on his computer or whatever. Just went right up to my room, and I was hanging out up there. And the way that the house is set up is my brother and I, like, our rooms shared a wall. So because of the fact that we shared a wall, like, you could hear pretty much everything. It was really annoying when he would have his friends over and they'd be, like, loud as hell. But this night, like, it just sounded like, he was playing on his computer, because I could hear him, like, typing. I could hear him, like, clicking the mouse. I heard him, like, get up and down from his computer chair. I heard him sit on the bed. And I didn't think anything of it. It just was his regular noises. I went to bed around, like, 3 o'clock. So I woke up the next day, and I had a text message from him, and it was a picture of the sunrise. And I'm thinking, like how did you, like, how are you sending me a picture of the sunrise? Like, you were still here, like, you would have had to leave, like, while I was still like trying to fall asleep in order to get there in time for sunrise. So I asked him, I said, how are you sending me a picture of the sunrise? And he's like, oh, we decided to leave last night at like 7, and we ended up just like sleeping in the car so we could wake up and go on the beach and take a picture of the sunrise. He left at 7 p.m. the night before, like while I was working. So I came home thinking that my brother was home with me, and I was actually home alone.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I'm a little late to the game, but I've been really trying to work up the nerve to tell one of my many ghost stories, but I've been nervous about it because I do feel like these stories have power around them, and if I talk about it too much, weird stuff starts to happen. Buttercup is already here. She always knows when I'm gonna start talking about some weird shit. Let me just start off by saying I've always been very sensitive to like energy around me. I can always sense when there's spirits in a room or something like that, and like if you don't believe me, that's fine. Most people are a little like wary about it, whatever. But it was very prominent when I was like preteen, like 11, 12, 13 years old. And I lived in this house, and the backyard was mostly woods. And I had my own room. And how the room was set up, like the door's here, and then along the wall there's 2 closets, like open door closets. You can see right through them. So bedroom door, first closet, second closet, and across from the second closet was my bed. So my bed, you could look directly into that closet, you could see into this closet, and then you could see the front door. I had a very uneasy feeling living there, like from the start. I was only there for a few years, but there was some weird stuff that happened. I won't go into too much detail, but the stuff that had been happening, it scared me so bad I started sleeping with the lights on. And I slept with the lights on for like a whole month. And I remember keeping a journal that I lost in the move, unfortunately. I kept a journal of when I was like waking up in the middle of the night. I was waking up at 3:04 a.m. every night for a month. Exactly 3:04. I'd wake up, I'd look at my clock on my nightstand, 3:04, I'd write it down. I'd write about whatever I was dreaming about, whatever I saw. I always felt uneasy when I woke up. Try to go back to sleep. I usually could. Exactly a month. The last night of the month that I had been waking up at 3:04. I couldn't go back to sleep. And I'm laying there. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck? And I felt cold. Like, I had my blankets up. I felt so cold. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like looking around my room. And oh my God. And my bed is facing this closet. And then there's the other closet. And I see a little girl. I say a little girl. Like, she was probably about my age, maybe a little younger. At the time, it was like 13. So she was probably 11 or 12. Crouched in the corner of my closet. I froze. She was like hiding. It looked like she was hiding, like in my. I was like, girl, and I pulled the covers up over my head. And a minute goes by, and I pull them back down, and she's standing in my closet. She's standing there, and I'm shaking, but she wasn't scary. She didn't look scary. She looked scared. She looked terrified, and I was like, oh my God! I pulled the covers back over my head. I pulled them back down, and now she's out of the closet. She's like standing by my bed, and I'm like, oh my God. And I finally figured out, okay, don't put the covers over your head. She's gonna just stand there, and then like she'll go away when the sun goes out. I'm standing there, I'm looking at her. She's standing there, I'm looking at her, and she goes, like, I said, what? And I went to go say something, and she panicked, and she went, shh, shh. And I like just looked at her, and she said, he's coming. And then ran back into my closet. She crouches back down. It's like 3:30 at this point. 10 minutes later, like 3:40, 3:45, a figure of a fucking man shows up in my bedroom doorway. Like, I can see that. And I'm just frozen. I don't move. I don't pull the covers up over my head. I just watch him. And I didn't go back to sleep. My alarm went off for school at like 6:15. I just let it go. And like the sun came up and he disappeared. And then I got ready for school. And that's it.
Tell me about a time you got a reading from a psychic.
Okay. First, ignore the stain. All of my sweaters are stained. But I have had probably total in the last 15 years, 3, if not 4 different mediums mention the exact same spirit guide. I guess she follows me around, and they've all described her perfectly to a T, unprompted. So I don't really know how to validate if this is true, but the fact that 3 or not, I think 3 for sure, maybe 4, have literally described the same person without me like saying anything, I'm gonna take it, at face value, right? So my first psychic reading was about 15 years ago. I was probably a junior or senior in high school, so like 2008, 2009. And the way this girl did it was you set the appointment online, you literally just like name and email, phone number, she called you at the designated time, you confirmed your name, and she would jump right into the reading. You didn't give her any information, she would just start. Which I think is really cool, especially if you're a little skeptical, because you're not providing information that they can like twist or feed off of. So as like a partial skeptic, even though I do very much so believe in this stuff, it kind of puts you a little more at ease, because you're not providing ammo in a sense for them to kind of like make things up. So she described this spirit guide that I have that is a redhead, super boisterous, rambunctious, very loud. She's always been described as my biggest cheerleader. She's so proud of me. A little heavier set, just this wild, crazy, redheaded spirit guide. And at first back then I'm like, could it be like, the spirit guide term wasn't used, just like this lady that follows you around. And so I was thinking like, redheads kind of run on my dad's side, like generationally, like going back. But I don't know anyone that's passed that could have been, and just didn't think much of it. And I did another reading with her a few years later, so this was probably about 10 years ago, years in between. I don't even think she knew it was the same person. Like, she was very elusive and hard to get in touch with. And she was very, she would get migraines, so she would constantly cancel appointments, which was a little odd, but again, set another appointment. It was an hour-long reading, just gave her my name, and she jumped right into it. And this spirit guide was mentioned again, and this was the first time I heard that term. Like, she's not a relative, because I had mentioned, she's been brought up before at a, previous reading, but I don't know any family member. And she was like, no, it doesn't need to be family. She's a spirit guide. She just follows you around. And I was like, oh, okay. And the reading went on. And then when TikTok came about back in 2020, when I joined, I did follow a few mediums on here that would go live, and you would just comment your name or like a hey emoji or little hand raise. And if she caught your name and had a message for you type of thing, the medium would read it out. And on 2 occasions, possibly 3, all different people, I jumped in, was like, hey, would love any messages you have. And all of them describe this lady to a T. And they would when my comment got, across their vision, they would be like, oh my God, where's Rachel? I am getting screamed at over here by this boisterous redhead who is just your biggest cheerleader. They would laugh. They were like, she's freaking hysterical. I don't know her name, but all of them describe the exact same person to a T. And I still, to this day, don't know her name or how she attached to me, but apparently she's great. She's the life of the party. She's a hoot. And she just follows me around, and she is she'll tell you how it is. She's got tude. She's got just this incredibly large, bigger than life personality. And I thought that was really wild that 3, if not 4, I really can't remember, different people at different times throughout the years have described the exact same spirit guide, totally unprompted. So I'll believe it. I'll believe it for now. If she's in my corner, I'll take it. I do have journals with other information from those readings years and years ago. I'll have to find it and go through and see if anything has come to fruition from those. But that was it. Thought that was fun.